Oh, 1, 2, 3. We are not live. We are not live, but we are alive. Gary and Kim, the second guest in the house.
Hi.
Today, we are going to be creating some mindfulness through art. The two are coming together. The three are coming together. Oh, what's that Spice Girls song? To become one. Anyway, no, it's not two, it's three. I digress. Anyway, lovely Kim Cofield is joining us today. And if you do not know Kim, well, you should go over and have a listen to her lovely podcast. It's called The Art Supply Posse. There'll be a picture on your screen right now of what it looks like. And you need to go and follow her and listen to her because, well, I've been on it and Gary's been on it, but there have also been some amazing artists and people interviewed. And so Kim is very much into her mindfulness, into creativity, into art, but also podcasting as well, and really delving into the psyche of people, which is what we do here today on our channel. So welcome, lovely YouTuber. If you like our content, by the way, you know what I'm going to say, please do give us a thumbs up, helps us in the algorithm, and also leave any comments below about what you think about the content. And it would be lovely if you subscribe. And the final thing is the bell, ding, 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 because when we load our content, which is every single Friday, you'll be notified and you can jump straight on board and do the exercise. Talking of which, if you want to go straight into the art exercise, the time code is below for you and you can start painting straight away. But if you want to stick around, we're going to have a little mindful chat or talk about mindfulness and what it does for us, particularly with art. But first of all, welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we should say that Kim, you may think, why is she sitting in a dark room with very mysterious lighting? Because Kim is in Australia. So for us, we're just starting our day, but Kim will shortly be going to bed. So what time is it for you in Australia, Kim?
It is now 7:30 on a Friday night, and I'm here with you.
You are. What better way to spend a Friday night than with us via the magic of YouTube?
Yes.
So if she's a little bit juddery or a little bit dark, it's because she's in Australia. But we're doing the best we can. We wanted to bring her on to do this interview with us. So lovely, Kim. It's so nice to see you in person because, of course, I only heard your voice when we did our podcast. We didn't see each other. We were just having a lovely... And I really, really enjoyed the podcast. And I sense that you are a person, Kim, who is very much into the mind and people and how we grow and how we change and mindfulness. So tell us a bit about yourself, particularly in terms of that.
I'm fascinated by how the people and why they do what they do. So like why they're drawn to a particular style of art or a particular art material or art practice, or I want to know why they do it and why it calls to them, which is why the podcast works so well for me, because I get to pick the brain of all these wonderful people and then share it with our audience, which is just really fantastic. But just lately, over the last little while, maybe the past 12 months or so, I guess I've been more open with our listeners in terms of my own mental health issues, and then bringing that into the podcast in ways, because some of the artists I've spoke to have various different experiences with mental health problems. And I think it's nice to hear from others, particularly if they are well known in their field. Like, it makes you realize that it's not just you. It's not, it affects so many other people. And we know that, right? But it's just getting that reminder. And quite a number of the people I've spoken to have found their art practice or their whatever they do because they needed something to help with their mental health. And not saying it's a cure for mental health illnesses, absolutely not, but it can certainly help, and it has helped a lot of people, including myself. So I'm just fascinated, and I love art. I mean, how can you not?
I completely agree with you, Kim, and it's like, I do feel that, energy attracts energy, people attract people, and somehow you and I got connected. We'd never heard of each other, and then we had that lovely podcast, and we really did connect, and very much like with Gary as well. Gary came into my hemisphere, and then here we are 3 years later, and it was so lovely seeing Gary at our retreat recently, and we really do connect, don't we, Gary?
We do indeed.
And we're very, yes, I said that, and we're very honest on this channel as well, Kim, and I do think that is really important, because I think that there's so much social media out there where you can look at everybody having the most amazing lives, and you can really sit there and think that yours is terrible. And everybody's lives at some point is terrible. We all have really awful things that happen to us. And so, yes, I really respect your candidness about your mental health struggles. And I think really importantly, what you're doing, what we're trying to do as well, is to say, don't be ashamed of your mental health battles, and don't think that you're the only one going through things. And I love the fact that you say that creativity can really help people. I had a day yesterday, I will say it right now. I sat in my garden yesterday, I went for a cycle ride. And if anybody looked at my Instagram yesterday, they would have seen, you saw it, Gary. I put a coffee and a blue sky and a bird, and put a nice Harry Styles song on there. Oh, my life was fabulous yesterday. Wasn't. I had one of the worst days yesterday in a long time. I was so down. And I sat there in the afternoon feeling like, what's the point? Well, I was that down. But you know what I did? I came in and I actually started to edit footage from people, and I made a blooper reel of Nicholas Ball doing his VIP things, which made me laugh out loud. That was my form of creativity yesterday. I just immersed myself in a creative task. So it's so important, and it does work, because I felt the energy shift. By the end of the day, I felt so much better. So,
actually, I must, sorry, Rachel, I was going to butt in.
No, always do.
That's important point is about the word creativity, and there's all the different facets. So, and I've said to you before, Rachel, I think you really are creative with all your filmmaking and your, videoing and the way you edit it all together. So that's your creative output. And when you went to that, you felt a lot better, didn't you? So we're all, have these different areas, and I think that's what we're trying to get across on the channel, is like, try these different things. One of them you might really connect with and actually expand upon, or you might just like dipping in and having a go of everything. But it's about getting creative, getting into that creative zone, and I think it does take you away from those doldrums or that anxiety or something that's going wrong in that day. It doesn't have to be over a week. It could be that day, and just think, right, no, I'm going to go and doodle something, I'm going to go and stitch something, I'm going to go and listen to something.
Yeah. And one thing that helped me yesterday, and I was just going to point it out on this channel today, I think this is a little tip from me, and it might not work for anybody apart from one person who's watching today. So if it works, then that's brilliant. So yesterday, when I came in and thought, right, I've got to, first of all, I wanted to clear my space because the house was a mess. So I started walking around and tidying. And what I kept wanting to do was lay down, right? Everything in my body was going, lay down, lay down. And then I remembered I watched Jerry Maguire recently. And there's a scene where the main character is watching the girl talk to Tom Cruise, and she wants her to get in the van and drive off, because she knows if she doesn't, she's going to end up with Tom Cruise. And the sister is like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But I remembered this scene, and I remember this character going, don't do it, don't do it, no, don't do it. And that little voice in my head, when I was wanting to just lay down, kept saying, don't do it, don't lay down, no, don't lay down, no, don't. And it was really weird, because that voice kept me going. I imagined that character, and I could see her in my head looking out the window going, don't do it. And it kept me going to then get me into my studio to do my practice. So if that could be a little tip for somebody out there, maybe think today about some film character where something means something to you that helps you get out of your dark mood, and then remember that character in your head. So when you have that dark moment, that character talks to you. That might be absolute nonsense, but that's what worked for me yesterday. How do you get yourself to your creative space and do something? Because I know there is a correlation. Creativity helps anxiety, but how do you escape the anxiety to go to the creativity to help the anxiety? Because it's a tough cycle.
It's dependent on a number of things. So I have a range of different things that I have to call on. Not one particular thing will work, and I can't tell you why one does and one doesn't on any given day or any given moment. If you could figure that out, that's the $1 million question, I guess. A big thing for me to pull myself out of anxiety is actually exercise. I certainly think, not that I'm saying exercise is creative, but it certainly helps to get rid of a lot of the noise, because I think of a lot of what I have with my anxiety is noise inside my mind. I do a lot of different creative things, so I don't just draw or I don't just paint. Like I do lots of different things, which on the surface probably looks silly because, you know, you're not becoming an expert in any one thing. But what that means is I'm called to a certain thing at a particular time. So what I've been doing recently is just stitching, whether it's stitching in little tiny sacred journals that I've been making. I interviewed a lady, Sarah De Jong. She has a business called 1000 Hearts, and I spoke to her for the podcast, and it's making little tiny felt hearts. And she started it to help. She just wanted to sort of do a mindful thing, and suddenly she's turned it into this business on the side. And I've been making them because there's something so relaxing about just sitting there and stitching just simple stitches for these tiny little love hearts, stuffing them with wool stuffing, and then they don't take very long to make. So it also feels like, oh, I've made 3 of these in half an hour or whatever. Like, you feel like really productive, which is also the other thing I like about art, is doing small art, because you can feel like I've done a great thing, like, you know, I've given myself 20 minutes and here's a finished thing, instead of having to walk away and come back to it. So it does depend. It depends on how anxious I am as to what I can use to help sort of, you know, lessen that or move away from that. And that's why I do so many different creative things, because they have different, they give me different things depending on where I'm at mentally.
You said, you know, maybe that people think that was silly because you're never going to be master of one. And I mean, I completely, well, if anybody doesn't think you're silly, well, more fool on them. That's their problem. That's nothing to do with you. That's their issue. You know, I think that actually creativity, I think it'd be quite rare to find someone who is only into one thing if they are truly creative, because there are so many wonderful ways of this world to be creative. And as you and I talked about, Kim, I really love photography. You know, the editing is natural for me.
Yeah.
But I started the slow hand stitching as well, which Gary's introduced me here on the channel. And it is a lovely meditative thing. I don't do it enough, but when I do it, which is usually when I sit down and do the 20 minutes with Gary a week, it is a lovely thing. And I find myself feeling much calmer at the end of it. And that's the point. You know, creativity is inclusive for everyone, but it should also include lots of creative arts. I mean, Gary, you're a well, I'd call you a master of all trades, because I mean, you know, that's the thing. I mean, someone at the retreat said about Gary, you know, I don't know if it was a negative or not, because I heard it secondhand from somebody else. They said to me that someone at Southern Retreat, but what is Gary's speciality? I said his speciality is that he's creative on so many levels. Isn't that a special thing in itself?
I know. You know, funny enough, it plays on my mind that I don't just stick to one thing. But, you know, I enjoy and I encompass so many creative things. I am a creative person. And there's that old saying, like, you know, master of none. You know, you've got your hands in all these things, but you're master of nothing. But actually, I am a master of many things, because I really, really hone it. And once I've honed that skill and can really do it, then I'm like, right, I've achieved that. I like that. Now, what's the next creative thing I can hone and I can share with people? So what is my thing? I'm a teacher. I'm an inspirer. That's what I'd like to think of myself. I teach, but also I inspire. So people look at me, look at my work and think, oh, I'd like to do that. I'd like to be like Gary. I want to do that as well. And another thing I want to do is make you smile, make you happy. So, you know, that's what I'm about. So yeah, I am not, I never want to be just known for one thing.
I was just going to say 2 things. One, after I spoke to you, Gary, you made me feel so much better about the fact that I'm interested in so many different things. I'm like, well, if Gary can do it, then so can I. Why not? But the other thing is like, you're creative, so therefore you like to try different things. And at the end of the day, I think art should be what we enjoy doing. Like, it shouldn't be a chore. If it's a chore, then stop doing it or find a different thing to do, because this isn't supposed to be. I mean, even if you're doing your art and you're earning a living, whether it's a part-time or a full-time, you know, a working artist, you've still got to love it. And if you don't love it, then what's the point? Like, to me, that's the whole point of it, is you've got to love it. So if I just do one thing only and then I get bored, I'm not going to enjoy it anymore. So you know, that's the way I always think about that too. It's like, no, I need to be loving what I'm doing, and right now what I'm being called to is stitching, so that's what I'm going to do. And then tomorrow it might be throwing paint on the hued canvas, like, so be it. That's just how my creativity works. So, you know, I think that's pretty much what I think, really.
Yeah, but I think also life is like that, because I think I look at myself as a 20-year-old, you know, I look at myself as a 15-year-old, someone in my 20s, someone in my 30s and 40s, and now in my 50s. And, you know, my daughter was saying to me, oh, but you've got yourself sorted. I said, I really have not got myself sorted. You know, she said, well, you know, did you start to kind of, did things come together for you in your 20s? I went, oh my goodness me, Maddie, if I look back at myself in my 20s, I just think, what an idiot. And the same, and to be honest, in my 30s and 40s. And that's the thing I was going to say to you about your creativity changes, our life changes. We change, hopefully. Some people never change, and they're the ones who are stuck, and it will just come to an end, and then they might just at some point, what was that all about? But I think if you're constantly changing and evolving and learning from lessons, it's the same with creativity. You know, you'll it's like, even like going to the gym. I went to the gym for ages, and then I've stopped going. Now, that's not that I don't want to exercise, but what I've started doing is wall Pilates and going on a bike. And then that might change.
Yeah.
That's what we do as human beings. We evolve. And so our creativity changes. And I remember when I first started this company, my whole thing was, oh, I'm not a sewer. I'm not really creative. I just bring people together. That's what I love doing. That's true. But I am so creative and always have been. And it was when I did an exercise with Gary, actually, where he said, come on, we'll get the sewing machine out this week, which filled me with dread and horror. Because, you know, I bought a sewing machine for my daughter. I made a bag once. It was a disaster. And I said, okay, and we got it out. I didn't have to thread it. I said, Gary, how do I thread this thing? And it was like, you've sold sewing machines for years on TV, and you've been around 150 Zoom classes, and you don't know how to thread your machine. Anyway, we managed to thread it somehow. But we actually did some free motion drawing. And I loved it, didn't I, Gary? I think my little thing's on the wall there in my gallery. But I loved it. And that was when I thought, oh, so it's not sewing that I'm not interested in. It's the type of sewing. I'm not going to sit down and make a quilt. At this point, maybe in my 60s, I will. But at this point, I'm like, I'm just not particularly interested in making a quilt, because I haven't got a lot of patience and I want things to be done. It's like when you said with the felt hearts. I love that, because I think that makes you feel better as well in terms of anxiety. When you achieve something, when you finish, you go, oh, I have achieved. So I love the free motion drawing. It's why I like the hand stitching and creating pictures. And that's why I like photography. There is something about creating pictures for me, and that's my creativity. But I think that's fine. That's fine. So one thing I would say that we're all a master of here on this channel, and hopefully we're helping other people as well, is to be a master of our minds, because your mind can control you and take you down a very wrong road, can't it? You know, if you read further into it, we're not going to talk about it now, but there's ego, there's the higher self. And your ego always tries to keep you safe by thinking, no, I'm not changing, and this is what I believe, and it tries, because that's what you've always done. But your higher self, your soul, always sits there and goes, no, actually, you know, we need to start doing this now, and if you don't follow it, you're not going to have a good time. So, but I think that one thing we're all doing through creativity is really getting a hold of our minds and helping our higher selves and our souls, which all sounds a bit deep, but it's helping the anxiety that we all.
I just was going to say, actually, it's true experience that I think if you've got an overactive mind, as in imagination, so you think of, and that can create anxiety. So what you do is you imagine scenarios, something's happened, you imagine scenarios, and then you build on that scenario. So then you start to create this story in your mind. That is the creative mind going in a more negative direction. What you do is actually, if that is you are creative. If you naturally overthink things, imagine things, or think of us as scenarios and start getting anxious, you are big time creative person. But what you need to do is like pull it back, and what you're going to do is you're going to use that creative energy and imagination into something like artworks, anything like that, and that will then stop it going in that negative direction and bring it into a much more positive direction. So that, and I know that for myself personally, you know, I'm a big time overthinker, over imaginator, get myself anxious. No, just get in the studio and get working and use that energy to do something that's much more positive, I think.
Your mind, you can imagine, like you said, you imagine things that are not happening. You make up stories. You imagine what that person is going to say to you if you said that to them, and this is how it's going to go. And that's not right. What you've got to do is you've just got to try and talk to that person and see how it's going to go. But it's the same with creativity, that you can tell yourself, oh, if I sit down, it's going to be rubbish. It's not going to be good enough. I'm not an artist. And it's the same thing. You've got to go, no, you just got to put your brush to the paint. You know, it's the same thing. It's about not, you know, making up these stories in our heads.
Yeah.
So lovely. We are asking our guests, this is just to give Gary a break. We're not interested in anybody else being on the channel. It's just that Gary's run out of ideas. And so I said, I better get in some guests to bring.
I love the honesty.
Like, Gary, come on. And he went, no, I'm out. I'm out. No, I'm joking. We're loving this influx. So, but what we did say to each other, Gary and I, was when we have guests on the show, we will ask them to show us their mindful practice, because that makes complete sense. So, lovely Kim, I said to you, you can do anything you like. What are you going to do? And you have decided upon some ink or some watercolor paper and a brush and some water, which is fantastic, because that's what we say to people. You don't need to spend millions of pounds on artist supplies. Kim, if you would like to talk us through this exercise, tell us what we need first of all, and then just talk us through it.
Sure. We're going to start with our water, and we're just going to wet our brush pretty generously, and then all we're going to do is just sort of spread that across the paper. Now, you don't really have to create any kind of, you know, it can be strokes, it can be sort of round, doesn't really make any difference, because it just doesn't matter. Basically, just get some water on that paper. You can even leave some of it dry if you want. It, again, no, doesn't really matter. You do whatever you want. Your paper's probably going to do what mine has done and spring up. I don't tape it down for this, because we're going to pick our paper up in a sec. So if it's no longer flat, no big deal, no stress. So the next thing, once you've done that, is to get, now I've got here, can you see, that is some fountain pen ink.
Yes.
But you don't have to use fountain pen ink. I've just got probably a little bit too much of it. And so this is a nice way to use it. You can certainly use watercolors. You can use acrylics if you've got them, and like put lots of water with them to make them really, really kind of runny, I guess. Anything really, as long as it's sort of probably actually the most important thing is get a color that you love. Don't do this with a color you do not like. This has got to be a color that you love. So I've gone for gold, because why not? It's a yellowy gold, and it's also an Australian brand. I just thought I'd use an Aussie brand. So now we're going to get our brush, and you want to try and get off, not all that, you don't need to dry that brush, but you want to take away some of the water. You can, if you like, dab it on a cloth or something if you've got one nearby, but it's not the end of the world if it's still a bit damp. And you're then just simply going to put your brush into your color. Now I'm just sort of dabbing it in there and getting, yeah, that looks all right. And you're just going to swirl it on your paper. Now what you can do is, if you like, you can actually like sort of create I won't say an image, but like a shape, you know, something you like. So when very first time I did this, I was thinking about like a cave kind of. I don't know why I had caves in my mind for some reason. So I sort of left this middle bit here empty. So I didn't worry about putting any color there. And I'm going to do that again. So you don't have to, like, this isn't making it all you know, the color you're using, although you can, but it is fine to have white patches. And if you want to go over and use some more to make some sections darker, you can do that. It really doesn't matter. You just sort of, it's just throwing color onto paper, really. That's the way I think of it anyway. Which kind of reminds me of, you know, when you're a kid and you just can do whatever you want when you're in kindergarten. There's no rules. So you can tip your paper, if you like, to sort of create some darker and lighter points. This being fountain pen ink, it has some natural, I think they call it chroma or chromatone or something like that in it, like properties that you can pull out colors. You can always too, if you have it handy, you can throw salt on it, or even something I do like to do, which is dip your brush into some water and then just kind of tap it over the color, and it just creates nice little splotches. So how's everyone looking? How are we feeling?
Good, good. I was going to use the ink that I had, but it was black. So when you said, you know, colour you really like, I thought, oh yeah, that's just going to be a black mess. So I'm just using watercolors.
Yeah,
bright yellow actually.
well, you could use black, because then you could use like a metallic pen or something to create the next bit. That would be cool.
Yes. But yeah, I'm just, you know, as we always do here, I just enjoy, as you say, just getting the paint onto the page. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's part of my, you know, learning is the patience thing, because, you know, I would just want this to be done in 3 minutes, and that's not the point. That's not what we're doing. You know, you've got to learn to really, you could sit here for 25 minutes and do this. Just keep doing paint, you know. Yeah. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm enjoying it. I just, as with all these things, I just love to be taught. I love to like become the passive learner, and I'm just there listening and watching and thinking, oh, so I've sort of like, I've done my purple, and then I thought, oh, do you know what? I could do with a little bit of like, I've got a little bit sort of a goldy mustard color, which I've just sort of like splodged in as well. So I have gone slightly off piece, breaking rules. That was always
that's
me.
all right.
Why do you need to break the rules, Gary? Because I want to see what would happen. So,
I see,
yeah.
Gary, you have broken the rule.
I'm sorry.
It looks good though.
Yeah,
I like it.
I just found, and I like you. I love playing with inks. I think inks are lovely, and the way they react with water and sort of swirl around, and you get those dark patches, those lighter patches. And of course, when you tip the paper up, you never know. You then have to let go of control and let it just start to mingle and just see what shapes and things happen. So yeah, fab.
I think that's why I like it, because it's that letting go of control. You're like, well, I'm doing this part of it, but then it's going to do its own thing, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Oh, exactly.
Well, I've done mine. I'll show you mine. I don't really know what mine is, but there.
So the next thing we want to do, we need to dry these, obviously. Right. So did everyone bring a hair? Have we all got a hairdryer?
Got a hairdryer?
I will have in a minute.
Yeah. So basically we just want to dry them off so as we can keep working.
And can we use the hairdryer to sort of like push the paint in different directions? Because, you know, the force of the heat will just push.
Yes, indeed.
Lovely. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
it will.
I'm on it. Lovely. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
So, as you can see, I don't know, you probably don't really see the shine very well, but this has got hints of glitter in it, or something like that, something shiny, which is really nice. In the sun is when it's the best.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you just want to grab your pen. I generally just use black because it's there and it works, but you can pick a color that, you know, works nicely with the color you've just used. You can also use like a grey lead pencil. It doesn't really matter, whatever you've got to hand, because this is just about doing something easily without sort of too much thought and no expensive equipment or materials. So now this is the bit where we go from, I guess, the play, and this is sort of where I notice the real mindfulness comes in, because we're just creating a repeated pattern. So I start off with just creating lines. So we're sort of thinking about, we don't want them to be straight, but we don't want them to be too all over the place. Kind of close, but you can have them separate. They can be different lengths, because what we're thinking about is actual vines. So vines with leaves on them, basically, which is what vines are. Anyway, and we're just going to create a bunch of those across the whole page. I tend to shorten mine in the middle, because I've still got in my mind, for whatever reason, about sort of looking into, into these vines, what's behind. But of course you don't have to, just do whatever you like, really. So we're just going to create a bunch of lines, and then we will create the leaves. And that's really, I think, for me, where the real mindfulness comes in, because it's such a repetitive thing. It's quite a nice way to just forget about whatever is causing you any problems, if it is. So now you've got your lines, and then we just start creating little leaves coming off each one. So mine are, I'll just do a few and then show you what I'm doing. So if you can see those, let me just bend that over for you a bit. Can we see that? So they're not perfect. They're just general shapes that look kind of like leaves, basically. And that's what we're doing. Now, depending on how much time you've got when you do this, sometimes I just leave them like this. I won't go in and make veins within the leaves, but then if I've got the time or the inclination to, I will go back in and, make them a bit veiny like leaves would be. But I find there's something really quite relaxing about just creating the same thing over and over again.
It's really nice to
If that
think
makes any sense.
one leaf shape, and you can have a completely stylized shape for a leaf, and just keep repeating that shape. And again, it becomes quite rhythmical, doesn't it? And become quite relaxing, because you get into a rhythm and I'm just drawing that shape. I'm drawing that shape. I'm drawing. And it just, it does. Time goes by. It relaxes. It calms the mind. And it's also relate to anything that has a repetitive pattern involved in it. We used to do this, and we've talked about this on doodling, even down to someone that crochets, they knit, they just do, like your Sashiko Japanese stitching is that running stitch, just that running stitch that just keeps repeating on a line. So you've probably drawn your lines first. So you don't even have to really sort of think it through. It's all mapped out. You just start the repetitive stitching, and I just find that really relaxing. Beautiful.
Yeah, I've had a few nights lately where I haven't been sleeping very well, and I'll wake up during the night, or if I'm having trouble falling asleep, and I'll have a small little art journal by my bed and some pencils, and I just find, honestly, just drawing circles randomly over and over again, different sizes really and whatever, is just really quite relaxing.
Really, that's a really good idea, because ditto, there are times, I don't know if it's where we are in the world at the moment, but I wake up like sort of 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm wide awake, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you toss and turn, and you think, right, I'm going to go get up, make myself a cup of tea. And of course you sit there with a cup of tea and you go for the phone and you just start scrolling through the phone, which is very bad. I mean, the light from the phone is just going to overstimulate you anyway. Rather than trying to calm the brain, it's going to really overstimulate. So you're not going to win. So I think the idea of just sort of like a journal by the bed, for either for doodling or just writing down a thought, or what if you've had a dream, you could put it in there as well. I love the idea of a bedtime journal, just by your bedstand, really, with your, lovely. I was nearly said
Yeah,
with your false teeth in a
yeah,
glass. No, I don't think any of us have got false teeth in a glass, but you could do if you wanted to. Oh well, I've gone crazy with the leaves. I've gone a whole big page full. So am I allowed? Am I allowed? Of course I'm allowed. I was going to just do a little bit of decoration inside of each leaf. Is that okay? I might
go
just
for it. Yes, do it.
I think
Yes.
like coloured pencil, and then see if I can get a bit of colour. Oh yeah, I can get a bit of colour. Just odd now and again. I'm just going to put just one or two of them. I'm just going to put a little bit of colour in them.
See, that's the really nice thing is depending on however you're feeling in the moment, you can do whatever you want with it. You can add the color or you can not put color, and you can, as I said, you can put veins in the leaves or not. Like it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. It's just the process.
And I like the idea of no sort of like rules or anything like that. I think it just, when you've got rules or you've got to be, done in a certain way, I think that sort of can put some people off or think, oh, I've got it wrong. Then you start to, doubt what you've done. Whereas if you've got, this is just because this is the idea, now break rules or take it wherever you want to, I think that allows for much more of a relaxed response.
Well, see, I've got a couple of different art journals, and I do these usually in there, and the paper is not at all suitable for being wet, but it still works anyway. Like I put a plastic thing behind it, so as it doesn't ruin the rest of the pages, and dry it off, and it doesn't matter. It's just the process. It's just the art journaling and that relaxing the mind, and then at the end of it, there's also something really nice to look at.
Exactly. I was just thinking about sometimes when we used to teach students, we sort of give them a theme. You could say like you dribble your paint or a process or something like that. And then we just say, make a response. Make a response. So that would allow, you don't say make a drawing, do this or whatever, just make a response. So people were then, I always, felt that they could do anything on within that remit of that sort of title, that project or whatever. So and that's what we're sort of doing now. We're just sort of making a response, playing. I've got some little,
because it should,
little circles.
art should be fun. We should be enjoying it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, just from a physiological point of view, it'd be really interesting to get someone who knows the physiology of the brain and why these repetitive motions like this and strokes do calm us down. What is the actual chemistry behind it? Because it is a strange thing that it does work. I am intrigued as to why something so simple works.
I've thought of trying to find, and I haven't, so far it's only been a thought, it hasn't gotten any further, of trying to find somebody to bring onto the podcast to talk about that and so much more, like why art is good for us and all that sort of stuff, because obviously there's reasons, I don't know what they are.
If you think art and creativity is not, it's calming and can be thought-provoking for a viewer, so the person that's not created that art and then looks at someone else's art or their creative outcomes, but also it is calming and relaxing and could be thought-provoking or make sure thoughts go in a nice calming direction for those who are being active in the process of being creative. So and I wonder if that's both the same areas of the brain or what it does or what hormones it creates, what by just doing or watching or taking part in art and creativity, where it is in the brain or what hormones we are stimulating.
It would be very interesting to find out, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Another thing that I really like about these little projects as well, which is a really interesting lesson to learn, and something that I've learned as we've kind of gone through, is that when you start something, it's like when I started washing my paint across the page, I always get envy in terms of, I always look at Gary and what he's doing and think, oh, his looks so much better than mine. Mine is going to be a mess. It's not working. It's not working. And then I've learned this important lesson that actually, when you just keep going and you keep adding and adding, it usually works out fine in the end,
Yes.
which is a really important line. And once again, that gives you then that sense of achievement that you've made something, you know, that you've created something, that you've done something positive.
Love it. I like yours,
Absolutely.
Rachel.
Thank you.
Very nice. I've got a few little, I've got fruits on my vines. I've got.
I was closer to the camera, Gary, so we can see.
Oh, sorry. Right. Yeah. Hang on. Let me just bring this right up. Can you all?
Yes. Yes. Lovely.
Yeah. I've really
Oh, I
enjoyed
love
that.
it.
And that, I know we sort of started off at vines, but it could be the little white dots. I'm sorry, I have to confess, getting my Posca pen out, because you know I just love a bit of Posca. And I just did some white dots, and now it's reminding me of those lovely strings of lights that you get in, you know, out in the twinkling in the gardens or on the Christmas tree or anything like that, really. So yeah, I've gone crazy with colour.
Do you know what else?
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Oh, thank you.
That's very Gary. You know what else this did for me as well was that as I was, I mean, I had no idea. Like when you said you were creating a cave, Kim, and my first thing was, well, I like the beach, so I started to create a sandy beach. Now, of course, we've hung some vines, not beach anymore. But you know what? I found myself thinking about, which was really lovely, as I was doing these leaves. I thought about when you are in a hot place like Greece or something, and you know there are some lovely vines, and then you can't kind of go through them and that sort of thing. So that took me off to sunnier, happier times, and that was a really nice thing to do as well. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know why it does that. I don't know how it works, but it's lovely that it does.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Let's bring us all back into vision. Okay. So here we are, back in the room. I really love that. I think that's really nice, and that is definitely going to go onto my gallery up there, which I must expand. So Kim, how did you find being in the Tea Time Tutorial house?
Right. I was very, very nervous, and then I wasn't.
Which says
so I guess the mindfulness worked.
Yeah, which says it all. Isn't it amazing how creativity can just calm us down, can calm down those anxieties? Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely lovely to have you. It's lovely to meet you in person rather than just a voice, and it's been lovely to have your lesson. It's always nice for me to see when Gary goes really quiet. Not that I like him, you know, not that I mind him being noisy, but I find it interesting. The artist comes on board, and then Gary is the student. You know, it's interesting. But yeah, no, it was lovely. It's a lovely little piece too. And as you say, just a little thing, as you were saying, you could, you know, that could be in a journal. You could have these things next to you at night time or in the daytime, or, you know, whenever you're feeling, you know, despondent. And as I say, get that film character in your head. Listen to that voice. No. When you want to just lay down and give up. And as we were saying there, you know, I think creativity is movement of some nature with our hands, with our minds. It's movement. So just start by moving. Maybe that's tidying the house first, but just get moving from where, because I found in the garden yesterday, I was just literally getting smaller into a ball. So I think, right, just get up, move, and then just do something. And something like this is very achievable. Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you to Gary, as always, for my co-guest, my co-host, and thank you to lovely Kim. It's been an absolute pleasure, and there'll be another guest on our tea time tutorial coming up. Of course, you lovely YouTuber can have a look in our list right now, our tea time tutorial list. It's a playlist with, I think, over 60 videos, maybe even more by the time you look, with lots of lovely arty exercises for you to play along with, and hopefully calm your mind, ease your anxieties, and help you to challenge yourself and grow as a person, because that is what life is all about. Right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.